And good afternoon, good evening, and good night, folks. You're listening to Arcane Radio. I'm Sean, the Fork Chop Forker, joined as always by Lon Strickler, the everyman over at phantomsandmonsters.com, broadcasting to you live from high atop the Pajama Factory in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Lon, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Been a busy week, but hanging in there.
Busy week indeed, and well, I'm not having a busy day. I'm on a little 5-day sabbatical here, so we're going to do some arcane radio and some investigating on a case I'm working on. And man, I tell you, I'm excited to get started. Albert Rosales was supposed to be our guest tonight. Unfortunately, circumstances prevented him from joining us, but we are rescheduling him from another day.
Yeah, he'll come back with us. He has some family issues, so. We're gonna have Butch Witkowski join us a little bit later. He's going to talk about some new developments as far as the case we've been involved with. So it will be interesting. So looking forward to that.
What an interesting show we're going to have here tonight, but we've got some interesting topics to talk about here before we get started.
Yeah, it's been a few things going on, and Of course, the M-Tooth, Monsters and Mysteries was on last night. It's the first I had seen it, and it was interesting. I can say that. I think the production made it a little more frightful than what it very well may have been. But then again, I don't know. It was. Let's put it this way: it was probably a scarier scenario than I thought it was when I actually took the report. So,
from an entertainment standpoint, the show was phenomenal. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Three segments that were on there. The Spotsville Monster, Barton Nutley. I'm sorry, I pronounced it Nutley. Yeah, I always butcher that last name. You know me, tongue-tied. But the show was good. I found that segment to be quite interesting and entertaining. The Tornado Phantoms was really odd. It creeped my wife out when her and I watched it together. She wasn't a fan of that, but that was interesting. It wasn't something I was familiar with, and as you and I joked, what the hell was a tornado phantom? But afterwards, they described these, for lack of a better term, entities that appeared after the catastrophic events at Joplin, that massive tornado that went through and did a lot of damage there years ago.
Yeah, it was multiple witnesses, just like it was like a guardian angel or, like some type of spirit guide watching over some of the people. And, I think the kids probably saw it more than anyone. Well, they're the ones that talked about it when they got to the hospitals and such. It was a multiple sighting, multiple experience. And that was interesting because quite frankly, I hadn't even heard of that.
Me either. In fact, you and I tried to do a Google search and everything afterwards and didn't get much about it. So I'm glad we were able to do a little investigating and, watch this show and find out a little bit more about this strange phenomena. Interesting to say the least, Lon. But of course, the segment you and I want to talk about is your little cameo there in the program. The Mantis Man finally made its debut on TV.
Yeah, and it was interesting because many people in Hackettstown had not heard about this. And of course, unless they read Phantoms of Monsters, they wouldn't have known about it. And it was in the local news and such, but people got a chance to tune in and saw it for the first time. So, I know there was a lot of it was funny. There was a lot of fishermen contacting me that they hadn't seen anything like that and were in the river and exactly. And I told them you'd have to talk to the witnesses and, I'd refer to them. So, but it was something interesting. I think they did a fairly good job with it. The graphics weren't great, I don't think, but who knows how to do a graphic of a Mantis Man? So I guess they did as well as they could. But, it's a strange phenomena. And quite frankly, I'm really hoping that if somebody else sees something, they contact me and, let me know what they saw, because I would like to go up there and take a look again, be a little more more investigative this next time than it was last time. And in fact, Butch has talked about going up there with me as well. So we'll have to wait and see.
Well, count me in if you decide to go. I'd like to check that out myself. Something really interesting. And seeing the reenactment, but listening to the actual witness talk, Lon, was pretty compelling. Like, wow, because we have heard about this phenomenon. You've talked about it for some time, but this is the first time I've been immersed, you know what I mean, by the just by the story. And it was something different. Hearing a witness tell the story, is pretty telling to the actual event. And to me, that was really important to understand and to be a part of, to watch that telling. And it was interesting, kind of lended a little bit more credibility to the phenomena to me.
The most compelling part of it is that the ESP mind-melding type of whatever effect this thing had on at least one of the witnesses. The first witness actually had some type of interaction as well, but it wasn't much said about it on the show. This is something similar to what some people say when they encounter a Bigfoot, and especially non-terrestrials or alien during either an encounter or an abduction. So is it the same thing? It very well could be. But the second witness, he lost all body function and everything when this happened to him. So it's the scenario is very similar to what happens when people are going through, especially younger people going through an abduction. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Point blank, extraterrestrial or not, what do you think this thing is?
I think it's a non-terrestrial. I can't say if it's extraterrestrial or from another planet or what or where it's from, but I think it's something that moves in and out of planes of existence. It may be able to do it through several different planes, but I think it's moving into our dimension for whatever reason. I don't know if it's coming in to feed, coming in just to explore. I don't know, but I think it's a non-terrestrial. And of course, these insectoid beings have been seen during human encounters with aliens. A lot of these races or species of aliens do congregate, and I've heard of several different types being together during abductions, where each of them seems to have their own little job, own little level, and are importance. And the insectoids are usually the ones on top from most of the descriptions I've received.
Well, that's the first thing Laura said when my wife, when we were watching the program. She goes, "It's like one of those insectoid aliens." I'm like, "How the hell do you know about those?" And she goes, "I do pay attention to." I think it's an extraterrestrial, but that's just my opinion. I don't have enough information backed up, but that's what it just reminds me of. But watching, listening to the witness recount how it just kind of slowly faded, like the show kind of had it more of like a cloaking. And it was done, but when he was recounting it was very like slowly fading away.
And I have to say that when you're talking about the grays, either the small grays or the even the tall grays in particular, they seem to move in and out like that as well. It's not like if they show up in your bedroom, they're coming through the doors. They just seem to appear and disappear. Fade in, fade out. It's the same type of thing for them.
For me, I think we could move this thing away from the cryptid standpoint and into something a little bit more, quote-unquote, paranormal, supernatural, in my opinion. Again, nonetheless, Lon, Monsters and Mysteries last night, good showing. Lauren Coleman reports, the cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman, reports on his Facebook page that Monsters and Mysteries will be running his never-before-revealed sighting of the South Illinois Black Panther. That episode's going to air on March 25th at 10 p.m. He posted that on his Facebook page today, so I'm interested to see and hear his recounting of this never-before-revealed sighting.
I have heard of this phenomena going on before. I have talked to at least one person who claims to have seen this thing. Now I don't know if it's the same. I don't know if it's the same cat or whatever it is that Coleman's talking about, but this phenomena is known. So cryptid, yeah, I think this is definitely cryptid. I think there was another type of cat species, a big cat species, seen in the same general area not long ago. This southern Illinois, western Kentucky, eastern Missouri area is ripe for a lot of cryptid activity. Of course, the land between the lakes is in this general area as well. So there is a lot of phenomena that goes on in that area. So including the UFO, because the UFO that the sightings from year 2000, the Southern Illinois, St. Louis sightings of that huge craft that all the police departments had seen. It's well known for that as well. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I'm glad you mentioned it because I didn't know anything about it, but I'll definitely be watching it.
Me too. It's a good Wednesday night activity.
Yeah.
It was not much going on a Wednesday night. I think it finally found its time span where it really belongs. Not really going up in competition with anything else. Not on the weekends when there's a lot of other programming on there that people are trying to fight for. It was on the Friday night for a while, and then they replaced that with that TNA wrestling. Mm-hmm. And then they moved it to that Saturday night spot, and I think it fits right at home on Wednesday nights. I think that's going to be a good time for it.
Yeah, I think a lot of these paranormal shows are trying to move into prime time in the week now. I have noticed that some of them are doing that, and then, of course, it's M2 is part of that's part of the Discovery Channel, so I think they are kind of moving their programming to the week. So they got a lot of other different programming, some good, some bad, but I think Monsters and Mysteries is a fairly well done production. I mean, some stories are maybe a bit contrived, have a little bit of entertainment value added to it, but for the most part, it's a good product, and I've enjoyed working with them.
Bound to happen for television. It really is. And I mean, aside from that, little additions and some scares put in there, overall good quality program for, taking the core material and actually doing something, good rendition of it, I think. So kudos to that program. And again, we talk about it every time we do a show because it gives us something to talk about.
Yeah, well, I tell you, the story editors, the story producers, and I've talked to, there's 2 or 3 of them there in particular that I've talked to. They have bounced some ideas off of me over the years, and of course they've done 2 of my stories as well. But they really dig. I don't know if I'd want that job, but they're really dedicated to finding some really odd things, and I think they've done a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, me too. Well, speaking of paranormal phenomena and new things, yesterday while I was doing my daily Facebook surfing, I stumbled upon a new type of phenomenon, Lon, called the black stick men.
Yeah, you mentioned that before the show.
And this is from MicahAckerman.com, the nuclear blog, Lon. I don't know if you've been on there, but I'll read this to you quick.
Mm-hmm.
A new phenomena has been reported recently, and I thought it sounded interesting, so I decided to let you guys know about it. Reportedly, in the last few years, people have seen entities which can only be described as black stick men. These creatures appear to be black stick figures that often are sighted around dusk or dawn. Reports have had them walking on the sides of roads or in alleys, and they seem to follow the unlucky person who witnesses them. Another strange thing about these stick figures is that they make no sound and cast no shadow. Rumor also has it that the figures are often charged with some form of electricity, most often reported as static. People who encounter these reportedly shy beings often have strange feelings of anger or agitation. The theory is that whatever energy these entities are charged with causes an atmospheric effect that makes people feel very strange, at the least. These stick figures should not be confused with shadow people, but it may be possible that they are all somehow related. What little is known about these creatures is based on eyewitness reports. They don't seem to be tied to any particular haunting, tragedy, or area, but the one thing is for sure, incidents in which black stick figures are witnessed has increased recently. From the Spirit Seekers website, the details of what little there are about these creatures' apparitions seem to be consistent from story to story. The appearance usually takes place along a deserted road or in an alleyway away from bright lights and prying eyes. The person encountering the stickmen more times than not report being tired. The figures move smoothly as if gliding. They do not make any sound, although the air around them is reportedly charged with static. The actual stickmen themselves seem indifferent to us unless provoked or if they realize they have been spotted. Then they will flee quickly, or in some rare instances will approach quickly in a frightening display of aggravation. However, there have been no reported incidents of anyone being touched or harmed by the mysterious beings. The only indications of their intent have been reports of vague feelings of malevolence, though some feel this has to do with the disturbances in the atmospheric barometric pressures that often accompany a sighting. And if anyone out there has witnessed these creatures, please post your experiences in the comment section of the MicahAckerman.com, and I'll repost this on the Arcane Radio page. And folks, if you have some familiar instance with this, please send it to us. Lon and I would like to hear about this new phenomena called the Black Stickmen.
You know, it sounds from have most of the sightings been out in California?
Didn't say specifically in this report where they were coming from.
I tell you, it sounds like a phenomena that was reported about 5 or 6 years ago called the night crawlers. And I don't know if you remember seeing this, but these beings looked like stickmen, and they were white in color. And they'd come out at night and they'd roam around in open areas. And you know, people were threatened by them, but I don't know what else other than that. It would, you know, if there was any malevolence or any type of contact with people. It kind of sounds like that in a way, because they, when you say stick people, they kind of looked like that. Now, if it's related, I don't know, but that's the only thing I can think of. The fact that it's this static electricity type of feeling or energy, it does kind of seem like a paranormal type of deal here, that it may be something that's doing, involved with EMF or, some type of spirit energy, maybe. I don't know.
Well, the thing, like the article said, is often accompanied by a feeling of agitation, perhaps a thought form of some sort? Possibly.
It's possible. Though if it was a thought form, it would probably take different shapes. But then again, these, when you're talking about thought forms, just like with Slender Man, I think that's turned into the thought form realm now, that, after the internet meme, and then it has become a thought form. This very well may be the same type of thing.
What the hell do you think about Slender Man, Lon? Is that something real?
I think it has become real in the sense that some people have made it real. That's a fine line between reality and fiction, but quite frankly, thought forms are fiction to a point that, there's not something that everybody can see, because it's one person that is actually manifesting it. I think that's what Slender Man has turned into, and maybe in some instances. Some people take a interest in it. They get involved with it. They kind of gear their life to it in some sense, and they may get to the point where they're hoping to see it and manifest it by accident. And I think that's, Robin Swoop has talked about that. He and I have talked about this as well. I think it has gotten to the thought form or tulpa level now. So, I think this is a phenomena that if it continues to be mentioned in these forums or on the internet as it's kind of like a a viral thing. I think that it's gonna, it's gonna continue. I think the Slender Man phenomenon is going to continue, and people are going to probably act on it or report seeing it.
Well, and I think you make a good point there, Lon. It's as real as people make it.
Sure.
But when you're using it as a criminal defense, you know what I mean? The case out west where they're using the Slender Man as the made the other person kill someone else, I think that's something that we have to really tie down, like you say, the reality of it. It's as real as we make it, right? So,
I think in her situation, she actually believed it was real. And I think she actually believed it talked to her. Now, some people swear in poltergeist situations that they communicate with the entity. I don't know if that's true or not. In their mind, they may think that.
There's actual mental illness that should go into that.
I think it's been determined she has a screw loose, but she still acted upon it. So, and I think it's probably a pretty good defense in their case, as far as using it as a mental issue.
Well, it kind of screams back to the DeFeo case. Can you use the paranormal as a defense in a murder case? And it didn't work out too well for him.
Well, yeah, Ronnie DeFeo. I think there were some other things beyond that with him. I think there was some type of energy in that house that just connected with him, and he ended up letting it get to him. And it was mental. There's no doubt about that. The guy's a flake, but he acted upon it. Now, that story always has fascinated me for a lot of reasons. But I myself don't think he did it alone. I think one of the sisters were involved in it.
Well, they've speculated that for some time now, too. Yeah. But I think the thing that was kind of telling from that, and I just watched something briefly on it today, The In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, go figure. Lutz was experiencing similar feelings and similar agitations going on, and they were noting the oddness and the similarities of how the two men even looked.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Before we turn this into a show about the Amityville, we kind of transitioned there pretty quickly, which is all right. And I guess, maybe that is a topic worth exploring. Yeah. Let's take this from the end of the spectrum we're at now, from the black stick men, and go opposite to the strange, tall, white albino beings, Lon.
Yeah, this was a story that Chris Holly sent to me today. So I posted on the blog. I kind of perused it somewhat, so maybe you want to talk a little bit about it. Chris usually posts or writes stories about personal encounters she has, but most of the time it's encounters that friends and neighbors and such in her neighborhood in Long Island, and she comes up with some pretty interesting things. But this is, I think this kind of goes back to another species, or supposed species of alien that people have been experiencing.
Well, it's interesting to say the least, and I believe, if I'm recalling this, I'm trying to pull up the article right now. This happened to a woman at the end of Long Island, Montauk, right? Montauk Point.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and here it's pulled up here. Do you want me to read it? I can read it for the audience. And again, this comes from Chris Holly. I was sent an email by a woman who lives on the end of Long Island, New York at Montauk Point. She told me that she often walked her two large dogs on the beach along the Atlantic Ocean coast on the end of Long Island. The woman told me that she often reads my articles and remembered one I wrote years ago about a strange, tall, very white, odd-looking family that lived on Long Island in the 1960s. And they're not talking about the Kennedys, folks. This lady told me that while walking her two large dogs during the months of December and January, she witnessed a strange family with a huge strange dog also walking on the beach. She told me they were extremely tall and seemed to be two couples of albinos with about 4 or 5 children with them running along the beach as the adults walked the dog. She told me she remembered my article and wanted to know if I had any other reports of this strange family being seen on Long Island. I contacted the woman who told me she stopped seeing the strange group of tall albino people at the end of February. She told me she found them to be so very odd that she asked the people in the town shops and her friends and neighbors if they have seen the group. The only other person who claimed to have seen them was an older man who would feed the birds along the shore on the beach, but he only noticed them once and did not recall ever seeing them again. I questioned her and found the woman to be concerned about the people, as she felt they were something other than human and felt very uncomfortable when walking near them. She told me her large dogs, who were very protective and a bit on the aggressive side, would whimper and stick their tails between their legs, dragging her away from the group, refusing to stay close to them, which ended with her being dragged into a half-run-down beach away from the strange group of people by her frightened protective pets. In all the years, 50 years since 1965, since my family and I encountered the same type of tall albino people, this was the first time anyone in my area ever talked about them seeing them not only on Long Island, but anywhere. And then they go on to write the original article. So it's very strange. So this lady and one other person sees this very tall family of albino people also walking their dog, but nobody else notices them but one other person.
I think this is a situation, and like some others I have read and people have told me about, where is certain non-humans are detected by certain humans. In other words, the humans that are reporting or mentioning are one of a few that have the ability to see these things. And I think excuse me, I think that may be what's going on here. I think a lot of that happens in cases of encounters where someone says they see this type of being and the other person's around them and they can't see it at the same time or have ever seen it. What causes that? I don't know. Is it controlled by the actual beings themselves, or is it just something that maybe possibly that somebody is able to see into an alternate universe? I don't know. That's the best thing I can come up with.
Well, again, you post a very interesting point there, and it goes back to something you said before, and we'll rehash it here for just a moment. Perhaps there is something to a certain subset of people, Lon, that may have that ability to quote or unquote pierce beyond the veil, or just have an open mind enough where they can witness these type of phenomena. And there's something interesting about that. Is that a possibility? Is something like that really happen? Or am I just full of hot air? I don't know. You know what I mean? And it's fascinating to me. Why do some people see things and other folks don't? But at the same time, you look at children, right? That uncorrupted, pure mind that hasn't been diluted with the world saying things aren't possible. To kids, everything's possible. And yet they see things that we don't see on almost a daily basis, and they interact with things that we don't on a daily basis. We usually call them figments of their imagination, but then again, you take that one step further and you ask yourself, perhaps there's something more to that. And that's where I'm kind of at with this. Perhaps there are folks that don't lose that, for lack of a better term, let's just call it that childlike wonder, that uncorrupted thought, that thought process, and they can see these things, and they can... perhaps there's something more to that, and maybe that's the key to opening up this whole realm of the paranormal, the otherworldly, the supernatural.
Well, I think that, and I used to think that it was a non-corrupted mind, and I thought that for a long time, but over the years I've kind of gone more to the theory that it may be brain chemistry of some type, that a younger brain either has some type of chemical in their brains that causes certain abilities that they are something that they lose, as they grow older. It may be classified as corruptible. Maybe it's something that is spurred on as they start to live life, and people tell them they can't do this or do that, and they just lose that ability. But I think there's something there that is unadulterated and is allowed to happen. But I think it's a more chemical basis than it is just, the fact that it's a thought thing or something that they pick up from someone else. I don't know. I mean,
perhaps
it is fascinating that, and I've investigated cases like this many times where children just see certain things. Another situation where we've got, it's happened twice now in the last couple of months where a child can recall a past life to such detail. And there have been instances of that before, but as the child gets older, they start to lose that connection. They start to forget about it because they're actually getting on with their life, and the past life recall is gone. I think a lot of this, I mean, I know it's being investigated. I know it's being looked into, but it's a fascinating phenomenon, and maybe we'll be able to, expound on it at some point and use it for some good. I don't know.
Well, I hope so. I mean, we're never going to get anywhere unless we ask the questions. That's
sure.
The thing. And I think that's where, perhaps a focus point could be put into place by somebody far smarter than me.
Well, it's that's why I like doing what I do, because I get the opportunity to experience people that experience other things. Let's put it that way. And it's something that, of course, I probably would have never thought of unless I had the opportunity to discuss these things or talk to people about their abilities or the things that they see, do, or experience. So, it's great, but some of the things you hear sometimes you just gotta kind of step back and think, do I want to present that?
You and I certainly are blessed with the ability to be able to talk and listen to people who experience really strange and unusual phenomena, and it impacts their life so greatly that they seek us out to talk to us about it. More so you than me. I get the Bigfoot stuff. You get everything else. And, for me, I kind of take a, responsibility to that, to those people that, are putting so much trust in us to, counsel them or give them information that sometimes we just don't have the answers to, Lon. And the fact that we're just willing to listen and really not pull any judgment on them, that service is invaluable to them. And this show's kind of a thank you, for that. It gives us the opportunity to kind of talk about these phenomena open without judgment. And I think, like I said, we're pretty special in that regard. Someone's looking out for us for that.
You had mentioned earlier, I had posted something on the blog concerning disclosing certain details of stories when I get them, and in particular, alien encounters or alien abductions. The question I basically asked everybody was, should I present every little dirty detail that I get from a report? Or should I just leave things out, even though it may not be, not be something that adds any value to the story, but should I report everything, And, I've thought about that from the very beginning, even with David Eckhart's ordeal, he and his family, I've rarely written about, the involvement that I've had with suspected alien encounters, even abductions. But now, of course, this Todd C's death case, which may eventually prove to be a non-terrestrial type of influence, for the most part, I've kept other type of findings and my conclusions out of the blog. I just don't really think it adds any value at putting such things in there, and real sordid details that I don't want kids getting on there and reading some of that stuff, freaking out or stuff like. Because I can't control who reads the blog.
But you make a great point on that, and we were going to save it for later. So what the hell? We might as well talk about it now, though.
Yeah.
As we'll call you a journalist because that's what essentially what you are, right? You're chronicling these, you're reporting on them. I think there's a certain responsibility where when you're writing this information, it shouldn't do harm to the people that are coming to you and trusting to you with this really delicate, sensitive information. And I don't think people understand, folks going through something like this, the tremendous amount of ridicule that they experience. This isn't something, Lon, especially in these abduction situations where somebody sees something running across the road in the middle of the night. This is something extremely personal and extremely emotionally upsetting and painful that has to be handled with the utmost delicacy. And, one, I commend you for that, for not taking these people and making them public pawns and puppets, because it just shows a testament to your character that you do care enough about these people. I'm not saying that because you're my co-host. I'm saying that because you're a human being. And from one human being to another, that's a pretty awesome thing to do, is not take advantage of somebody in such a situation, for lack of a better term. It's a tremendously personal, powerful experience, and you're treating it with such credibility and in good taste. And I fear that with other people that report on this, that, maybe they are giving out a little bit too much. And I know you struggle with it because there are times you and I talk, you're like, I don't know if I want to talk about this or put this out there. I think that's a good thing. And as we talked about on show notes with Shannon Legro the other night, and we touched on it briefly about what you should disclose. I think as professionals, not that we claim to be professional investigators or whatnot, because we know that term doesn't exist, but in any kind of professional setting, when you're doing some sort of investigating, you have to establish some sort of personal baseline ground rules that you just won't violate. Mm-hmm. And if that's, really sensitive personal information and stuff that, you're not writing Jerry Springer paranormal sitcom stuff out there. No. You're writing honest-to-God research. And I think that's the difference. If you want that sleaze, read it somewhere else. But I think it takes somebody with a certain set of integrity and values to not report that way. And I think it's a lot more beneficial to the people who are disclosing this information, that other folks, so we can collect the data, other folks that are experiencing this kind of phenomena can come to you and say, this is a trusted source, someone who's not going to use me as ratings or as a portfolio to make money off of. This is somebody who's going to treat me as a person. And that's a huge difference. And, one, I commend you for that. But two, I think more people, we really need to get into that line of thought that these are actual people in situations that we need to protect. Even if we're going to report on it, we still have to protect.
Well, I posted this article yesterday, and I had a full mailbox this morning. Now, some people, I'd say the minority, agreed with me. I got to be careful what I say, show some, continue showing integrity as far as the information, that is supplied to me. And, also to, leave some things out that really don't add any value to the story. But, on the other hand, I got blasted by a lot of people saying that, well, regardless of the fact, you should disclose regardless, put it out there. It's better to disclose things. And I'll be quite honest with you, I subscribe to some of the logic that people may not be ready for certain specifics, Just like the government says, well, and the government knows what's going on with UFOs and aliens, but quite frankly, they're not putting it out there, and there's a reason why they're not putting it out there. I may not agree with it all the time, but I think in my case, since I'm not the government and I'm not responsible to everybody, I think it's best for me to, disclose less controversial particulars. And now I may, quite frankly, if I'm not writing it down and I'm on the radio, I may disclose a few more things. But like I said again, I don't want to put it out there that for certain people that shouldn't be reading it to get it and to, start using it possibly against one of the witnesses, or, getting the wrong impression when I'm writing. So, it is a fine line. Yeah, I tell you, I sit on a lot of cases. There are a lot of them that I get that I sit on, and, I don't put it out there. And I think it's probably in the greater interest to do that. But, it is a constant battle.
Well, I think if there's something controversial, as you said, those controversial particulars, I think they should be disclosed by the experiencee, don't you? That should be somebody, that should be their right to come out and say, this is what happens. Or they come to you and say, Lon, we've been sitting on this and you've been giving folks a little bit. You know what? Hit them with the rest of it. Let them know what's really going on. That should be their choice, not our choice, And if folks are uncomfortable with that, I'm sorry. But you want to read a tabloid, go pick up Weekly World News. If these folks want to disclose what's going on with them, they have the right to disclose the information to us. We don't have the right to take that out from under them and do what we want with it. That's not responsibility. That's being a trash journalist, and it's being just a trash investigator. What possible harm could come to these folks? And again, I'm sure our listeners have a variety of opinions on this as well, and I don't want to alienate any of them.
Uh-huh.
But personally, for me speaking from my perspective, and let me just frame this for a second, and I apologize for this brief pause, but we don't know what the government knows. We don't know what certain fringe groups know, correct? We don't even know if these groups, Lon, are even reportable to the government.
Uh-huh.
Why would we want to put somebody in danger? Why would we want, and I'm not saying that there is a real threat or a real credible danger, but there's that part of my mind that says, what if?
Uh-huh.
What if Sean? What if Lon? That there is something more nefarious out there, or what if there are people in these agencies keeping track of these things, and what happens if something befalls our witnesses or befalls one of your contacts? I'd feel pretty terrible about that.
Oh, that's it, exactly. I mean, I don't take a laissez-faire attitude with anything I get, and in particular with David's, situation. And I told David from the very beginning, now David and I talk occasionally, and I get updates from him. But I told him at the beginning, look, I appreciate that I got all the information I got from him, but there is some information I just am simply not going to put out there. Now, I may talk about it, with other colleagues and researchers, where I think they need to know maybe a particular, detail, but as far as actually putting it in print or, explaining the bad parts of what, or something I feel is not really that great to put out, I'm just not going to do it. And I think David kind of pushes me a little bit to want me to do that, but I've kind of held off on it. You would think it'd be the other way around, but there's just some things I don't know if I want to put out. And David's story, I probably have disclosed maybe half of it. There's a lot more out there, and maybe one day, but it's just not his case. There's other cases too that other situations that I get some pretty, like I say, pretty sordid details that I just feel are best left, in the file for the time being. And if I need to get it out, I'll get it out.
There you have it. And I guess one thing that we can talk about here, Lon, not to wrap us up, but we do have a guest to bring on.
Uh-huh.
But we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the Paranormal Round Table event on April 18th, 2015. Once again in Alburtis, PA at the Alburtis Area Community Center, 220 West 2nd Street, Alburtis, PA 18011 from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Tickets on sale now for $15 on the internet, $20 at the door. A roundtable discussion driven by the audience featuring members of the Keystone Bigfoot Project, Phantoms and Monsters 14 Research Division, Legend Hunters, UFO Research Center of PA, and Ghost Hunters Incorporated, with you and I being there with our sparkling personalities, tentatively, because, things may change.
Mm-hmm.
But going to be a great event, and I'm looking forward to it. And again, that's on April 18th, 2015 in Alburtis. And you can go to ALHS 18011.org and pick up your tickets. And, post on the Arcane Radio page event that we created, Arcane Radio on Facebook, and let us know if you're going. We'd like to hook up and see you and pick your brain. What's going to make Arcane Radio the best for you? And
I think it's going to be a good experience all around. I think a lot of situations that have not been disclosed may possibly come up, and that's great. That's good for everybody.
Yeah, and one of the gentlemen who will be in attendance, in fact, the man who put this together, Mr. Butch Witkowski from the UFO Research Center of Pennsylvania and the editor of JAR, the Journal for Abnormal Abduction Research. And just a little bit about Butch. Butch Witkowski has been an independent researcher since 1989, when he, along with 4 other people, witnessed a UFO of unbelievable size quietly hover above a mountain in Tucson, Arizona. It was totally silent. Burned copper in color and at least 3 football fields in length, it moved slowly up and down, then rose upwards, moved forwards, and vanished at lightning speed. They all agreed on what they had just seen. However, calls to the sheriff's department, the news media, and the local Air Force base yielded no sighting reports. Butch began his own investigation into UFO phenomena on that day. After joining MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, Butch was able to dig deeper into past and existing cases and even pursue more on-site investigations. But his research was still lacking something, and he wasn't getting to the crucial answers that he was seeking. It was time to go about his work in a different manner, and after almost a year of serious reflection and consideration, Butch started the UFO Research Center of Pennsylvania in 2009 and brought together some of the best like-minded researchers he could find. The use of multidisciplined investigators enhanced UFO RCOP's fact-finding like no other group that he's aware of at the present. The primary objective is to pursue both the historical cases and new cases that arise with hopes of bringing resolution to some of these cases of high strangeness. They have also fielded 2 fully equipped mobile units and have affiliate groups in 9 states, even including one in Europe. And Mr. Butch Witkowski is going to be joining us here in a few moments, so sit back, relax, and enjoy this brief blip, because you're never going to hear a commercial, because we're going to cut it, and then when we come back, we'll be with Mr. Butch Witkowski. And we're back. Arcane Radio, Sean Forker, the Fork Chop himself, and Mr. Lon Strickler from Phantoms and Monsters, with our good friend, as you heard the intro before the little break there, from Mr. Butch Witkowski. Butch, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing fine, guys. How you all doing?
We're hanging in there.
A good show so far.
It's been a busy week for us. I think it's been a busy week for everybody.
So, Butch, we got you on here. You know, you're our... kind of our, I don't want to call you a fill-in because you're always much more than a fill-in, but you're our, the man we can always count on to stop on and talk about the strange, unusual world we live in. And we're just glad that you could join us tonight. And I know, just by following you on Facebook, that you put out a new edition of JAR.
Yes. Yeah, the newest edition went up day before yesterday, I believe. Yeah, day before yesterday it went up. It's really going well. A lot of cases to put in for the next one. I'm trying to stagger them to not let them be so case heavy, if you know what I mean, to really, because the groups that do submit stuff, you know, they have things going on, so I kind of put that out there for them more this month, and then next month there's like 4 or 5 new cases to go in. But they say it's doing very well, and I'm sure Elaine Douglas is looking down on us somewhere and going like, damn, finally worked.
Yeah, she, boy, Elaine, I tell you, that was one lady who did a lot of work. 27 or 28 years worth. Yes, it was. I mean,
when you look at her files on the Elaine Douglas site, which is managed by Marilyn Carlson out of Oklahoma, the stuff that she had, I mean, the stuff she collected, the papers that she got from places that she shouldn't have never really got. And, you know, we were fortunate. We were left her book collection, and I'm still finding books that I've never heard of, written by, you know, like Jacques Vallée, and I can't find them. I mean, I have a copy here now, but books on near-death experiences, Bigfoot, ufology of all types, creatures. I mean, she was into everything. And, I mean, her library's taken up pretty much of my dining room right now, but we'll take care of that shortly. I expected a box or two of books. I didn't expect eight boxes of books, and they're big boxes.
So why don't you? We did talk about the Paranormal Round Table that's coming up in April.
Yes.
Why don't you give the folks your assessment of what this is going to be?
Well, the Paranormal Round Table was just an idea I had a long time ago, and finally got put together. Conferences are conferences, and they cost a lot of money, and basically you're paying to go see the same people most of the time, and hear the same stories about Roswell and this and that. I mean, stories that have been out there for 50 years. Nobody talks about what's going on now or what they're doing or what research is moving forward, what's become stagnant, what's a hoax. So I thought, if I got some groups together, and we did, and the Alburtis Lockridge Historical Society is putting it on, and the proceeds will go to restoration of their 1870 Memorial Church headquarters. And what it is, it's just going to be a roundtable discussion. It's going to be the guys from the groups up front, the people in the audience, and they can ask what they want to ask. They can ask what we do, how we do it, what type of equipment we use, what have we found, what have we not found, what are we looking at now. I'm sure they're all going to have cases that, they're going to ask about that maybe we can help them out with. So it's going to encompass, ghost hunters and the paranormal and cryptozoology, UFOs, 14 cases, just basically all the cases of high strangeness in the state of Pennsylvania. And I'm sure we'll get cases that are out of Pennsylvania. But the groups that are going to be involved, it's the Ghost Hunters, Inc., Incorporated, the Keystone Bigfoot Project, which I'm sure Lon's familiar with, and Sean should be more familiar with.
Just a little bit.
Legend Hunters, Dave Ruppert and his crew, Phantoms and Monsters, of course, Lon, and ourselves, UFO Research Center in Pennsylvania. And it's going to start at 9 in the morning. It's going to be going through till 8 o'clock at night. There will be food on the premises. The place that it's being held at, which is the Alburtis Lockridge, what's it called? Community Center. Yeah, they're going to have a food service there, so people will be able to get drinks and food if they want it. It's going to be different in the fact that nobody's going to be up there putting up a PowerPoint presentation and giving their predetermined speech that they've been given now for many years. It's just going to be one-on-one with the audience, and the amount of information that these groups have, as opposed to what they would normally get from speakers at a large conference, is just going to be pretty much never been done before that I'm aware of. And the price is right. It's $15 pre-sale and $20 at the door, but they're limited to 300 seats, and the 300 seats, I understand, are going really fast. There are going to be some people there that are not going to be speaking, but they're going to be there for information if it's wanted. I'm sure our good friend Larry is going to be there to discuss human combustion, spontaneous human combustion, Larry Arnold, and some folks are coming up from Philadelphia from the Starborn Support Group, which is an abduction support group. And I'm just hoping that we get a lot of calls. A lot of reported sightings are up in the northeast part of Pennsylvania and central Pennsylvania, but there is very little in the way of investigators in those areas. MUFON has some investigators, I believe, in Lackawanna County, but really central Pennsylvania is a real hot spot. And, the Clearfield County, Center County, all those areas are just wild with, when you look at the old reports, as a matter of fact, I was looking at Sean's reports today, And some of those are, really good reports. And PBS, they have a bunch of reports out there. And of course, we have this creature report going on up in Clearfield. But I think the Paranormal Round Table is going to be really neat. It's going to be a lot of fun. And basically, it's a one-on-one with the people that want to know what we're doing.
That's it.
Nobody tells anybody what they're doing. They just do it, and they file a report, and then they put it up wherever they put it up.
Yeah.
And that's the end of it. I mean, it never goes any further than that.
No, there's a lot of people that have questions to what we do and how often we're doing things. And the thing is, Butch and Lon, you guys both know, is sometimes we don't have the time to sit down and put it on the website or on the report. That as much as we'd like to be transparent about things and get information out there, it's not always possible due to constraints of life.
Yeah, exactly. And I have people send me emails, want to know about a certain piece of equipment, or how can they do this, or how can they do that, or where's the best place to find this, or where's the best place to find that. And I try to answer them as fast as I can, but, when you get 60, 70 emails every morning, it's just loaded with emails, not just from Pennsylvania, from all over the country, because our group is all over the country. But one of the things that's has always intrigued me was, somebody from maybe Florida will call up or send me an email and want to discuss a case in Pennsylvania, whether it be a Bigfoot case or a paranormal case or a UFO case. And it just amazes me that, when you find out that, they used to live in Pittsburgh, or they live down in Reading, or, they're from the state. They just moved away. A fellow from Louisiana just contacted me, told me about this great report that, I don't know, he didn't give it to MUFON. MUFON didn't exist when he gave it out. It might have been APRO or one of those early groups. But as he's describing the scene, I'm looking at an overhead on Google. And now this case is very old. This guy's 71, 72. But he just wanted to tell somebody about it. And he's telling me how this craft came overhead of a junkyard that he was in. He collected car keys. So he would go to the junkyard every now and then on a weekend and just swipe all the keys. He said he had a great collection. And he saw this craft above the water and the river running down, Schuylkill River running down past it. And he starts to describe this, and I'm looking at it as he's describing. He says, there used to be an old bridge, or there was a bridge across there. Well, I could see where the bridge used to be. And he said, then this road ran up this way. And he said, if you can visualize this. Now, I didn't tell him I was looking at Google. And he says, the parking lot's here, and I can see the cars. The junkyard's still there. And he's describing for me. He said, there's a shed in the middle of the yard where they used to just, put tools. And he said, that's where I hid out. And he said, it actually scanned light came through the cracks in the wood and stuff. And it's just neat that, people see that, remember that stuff. And although they never reported, or if they did report it, to one of the older groups that never put their stuff forward, to hear those kind of stories. And then when I looked up the area that he said it happened in, it's also rich with a lot of nowadays reports on UFOs. And it kind of hits a favorite spot of Lon and I, this is just outside of Northumberland County. So I think the Paranormal Table is going to be a great day, a lot of fun. It's going to be good to intertwine the groups, all intertwining, because I'm sure there's all information we can share between ourselves, not only with the public. But we'll have our big van there with all the equipment, so people can actually see that we really do have that equipment. And I think it's just going to be a good day, a good fun time for everybody.
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite interesting, and I think that it gives everybody an opportunity to, to tell something that maybe they've been sitting on for a long time. But they contact us by email, they hear us on the radio, or they talk to us on Facebook. But the chances of them really meeting us face on, head to really discuss something, that's, like Sean said, there's a lot of things going on, so it's not like you can spend 4 hours a day sitting on your front porch waiting for people to drive up and talk to you. That's right.
So it's an opportunity both for the groups, the people in the groups to talk to the folks and the folks to talk to us, and hopefully, I'm sure we're going to get new reports. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of good questions. I'm sure we're going to get some strange questions, but it's so far tickets are selling very well. They think it's going to be a sellout. So anybody didn't get their ticket yet, maybe you want to do that because, like I said, they're limited to 300 seats, and that's it. I mean, there's no standing room after the 300 seats are taken.
Yeah, that fire marshal might frown a little bit when you start packing buildings up.
Yeah, if he sees them standing up outside and on the roof and stuff, that's not going to go over well.
But you said something a few moments earlier, and I just wanted to touch on it quick because, we talk about, like you said, looking through some of the old reports on Keystone Bigfoot and other places. We're starting to get a lot more reports from the northern tier and the northern central part of the state because they now know someone's out there investigating. We live in an area, particularly up here, where there aren't a lot of people investigating this kind of stuff, credible people anyhow. And I think, again, this advertising of this type of event is going to further our cause of getting that information out that there are people in this area that really want to legitimately look into your encounter, your sighting, and we're established people. We're not new. We've been doing this a long time, and we can't do this without you.
Yeah, that and the fact that, if it goes as well as I think it's going to go, I'd really like to hold one up in that area. Maybe it's a local fire company, maybe an outdoor thing. Doesn't have to be indoors in the summertime. It can be outdoor. Combine a round table with a Star Watch or some training on how to investigate, Bigfoot sightings. There's a whole realm of things you can do, and so I'm hoping that it kind of catches on and we can move it around the state because it's like you said, there's a lot of territory, in that northern tier and the north central tier. And although it's not populated like Philadelphia, but there is a population, and these people see things, whether it's in the sky or on the ground, or it's a paranormal event. And like you said, it's kind of slim pickings when it comes to finding somebody that's going to either show up or call you or follow up on the case. And I think it's just good for us as investigators and researchers. And it's good for the public because now they have somebody they can call or talk to or, have somebody, come and look at these footprints they saw or see pictures of what they took. I just think it's a good all-around thing for everybody that's going to be involved, both the public and the researchers.
Benefits a good cause.
Yeah. I've been to the place twice, the Alburtis Lock Ridge Historical Society. That 1870 church, the first time I walked in it, I thought, this is going to be just, run down, all beat to death. The outside needs work. They're working on that now, painting and stuff. But when you walk inside, it looks like it was built the day before yesterday. I mean, it's gorgeous. I mean, the pews, the windows, I mean, it's just the way it was. I mean, the little organ and piano over in the corner and the little speakers altar up the front. And it's just gorgeous. And, it was really taken care of. And in the basement is where the actual historical society is, where they have all of, the historical stuff from the area. But the church itself is just, it's amazing. It's really something to see. And anybody that's going to show up, I mean, whether they can go up early, to just drive up the street. It's only up the street, so all they got to do is drive up the street. Just look at the place, take pictures. It has some paranormal activity. The Alburtis Lockridge Furnace, which is down the street about a block. That's also a historical site. I mean, they have everything there from way back. They had Indian wars in that area. There are burial mounds. There are spirit sightings, photographs of spirits. A lot of strange stuff goes on down there. So that's just an area that's been preserved from the 1860s and 1870s, and it goes back even further than that with settlers. So there's a lot of history there. So the history buffs that show up, they can stroll around the next day and stay overnight and do whatever they want. But it's really a neat place to visit.
Butch, you mentioned earlier, talked about Clearfield and some of the weird things going on up there, and of course, Sean and I know that it is definitely a strange area of the state. But of course, you you got a report back in November last year concerning a possible cryptid sighting in the state game land in 331, which is in Clearfield. It's actually close to DuBois, I think.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about that report? Now, we have talked about it. Sean and I have talked about it a bit before on other shows, but why don't you talk about this and let the folks know what's going on there and what's been going on and what we plan on doing.
Well, we got a report. The actual event took place on November 6th of 2014. And a gentleman, a retired airline pilot and military pilot of 40 years, was walking his dogs like he does. He said on a nice day, he takes his 2 Weimaraners out for a walk, and he usually goes up to the state game lands 331, which the area that he was in is near the further end toward Penfield. And he's a hunter. He's hunted there all his life. He's familiar with the area. He doesn't live far away. And as he parks his truck, gets his 2 dogs out. Of course, they're on leashes. He's walking up a fire trail. And for your listeners who don't know what a fire trail is, that's just a wider trail so they can get fire apparatus in case of a forest fire. He walks up the fire trail. He gets up about 150 yards from his truck, and the dogs start to go crazy. They're pawing at the ground, and they're pawing that hard. They're digging a hole, each of them. And he said they've never acted that way. He's looking around. He thought maybe they saw a skunk or a bear or deer or something, but he didn't see anything. He saw nothing. The dogs were focused on the right-hand side of the road, and he had all he could do to keep them, just hold them back. And out from the tree line at the edge of the road walks this, I'm going to use the word creature because I wouldn't know what else to call it. And he said it walked across the road, got on the other side, and walked into the woods, and the dogs were still at it. And he took the dogs back and retrieved the handgun that he had in the truck and came back in, went into the right-hand side, went over to the left-hand side. He didn't see anything. But his description of it was, first of all, he said, it was not Bigfoot. That was the first thing he said. He said, I know what pictures of Bigfoot look like, and this was no Bigfoot. So he kind of described it as a muscular man, tall, and he said it stood approximately 8 to 10 feet tall. Now that's his estimation, which the following day they did something and he called me back. He says, no, more like 7 to 8 feet tall, because then he was looking at a tree and he kind of gauged it by a tree, a low branch. But he said when this creature walked across in front of him, he got a good look at it, head to toe. It did not look at him. It did not look at the dogs, like he and the dogs weren't even there. It paid no attention whatsoever to two Weimaraners. They're a big dog, growling, snarling, and ripping, trying to get to it, and him standing there, and it never even twitched. It just walked across like they didn't exist. He said the hair on it was short. It was either dark brown or black. He said very muscular, no lengthened arms, longer than normal arms or legs. He didn't notice any big feet or long hair, no tail. He said if it had ears, he didn't see that. It just, he didn't know what he saw. He said, but one of the things that stuck out that still puzzles him is that he did notice it had a snout. Now, he described the snout not like a dog like a Doberman or a Weimaraner or even like one of my dachshunds. He said it was a short snout, more like a bulldog. He saw no facial features because it was sideways. All he saw was the profile. But again, he started to tell me, he says, look, he said, I'm telling you, whatever it was no Bigfoot. And whatever it was, 2 dogs and myself stand there, didn't phase it one bit, just walked right across. So he said, the best I can describe it, he said, if I had to put it in plain terms, he said it was just a tall, big, well-musculared, hairy man. And he said, that is the best I can describe it. He said, I have no other description. So later in the evening, he had found something on the internet, and he sent me the drawing, and he said, it's only an illustration. I just looked for something that closely resembled the creature, and I made some changes with color. So after he sent me the picture, he said that he is going to get a hold of a couple friends, and they were going to go down the next day, which would have made it the 7th, the Sunday. And so he gathered up 2 buddies. He told them what was going on. And they armed themselves to the teeth with hunting rifles, and they went back. And this is where the story gets, if it can get any stranger than the creature walking across not paying any attention, it gets stranger. They go back, he parks the same place, they get out, they load up, they go in. He can see exactly where he was standing because there's the 2 holes left by the dogs the day prior. So they walk up, and he said, this is pretty much where it came out of. So they went in there. They went back about 50, 100 yards. They didn't see anything or anything like that. Nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no downed trees, nothing like that. They come out. They walk straight across. They get about 50 feet into the other side, and they stop. And they basically all look at each other, and it comes out, we need to get out of here, and we need to get out of here right now. And for 3 guys to have the same feelings of disaster, dread, something bad's going to happen at the same time, that's pretty unusual in itself. So they don't walk out. They back out with their weapons facing forward. And they get back out onto the road, and they go back to the truck. And he called me later that evening to tell me what had happened. And he said, I want to tell you something, Mr. Witkowski. He says, I am never going in those woods again, under any circumstance. To walk dogs, to hunt, never again. And I tried to get out of him what happened. He said, all I know is we shouldn't have been there. And we were basically all feeling the same thing. This was very dangerous. We shouldn't be there. We need to get out of here, and like now. And they left. So, what's that all about?
That's I remember when you told me that, and I'm thinking to myself, well, that flight or fear and flight thing,
mm-hmm.
that reaction to happen to 3 individuals or even more at one time, says to me that there's something there, either magnetic wise, electronic magnetic wise, that sets something out in everybody's brain and just put them into that mode of fear and flight.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing I could figure. I mean, they weren't seeing anything; they were sensing something. I guess the old primal fear came in and took over, and they all knew they had to get the hell out of there.
Yeah, and and the guy was very, he was very intelligent. I mean, everything he talked about, he explained as he was going along, so I didn't misinterpret anything. Anything I asked, he, answered the question, except when it came to that. I said, well, what did you feel? He said, all I felt was we needed to get out of there right now, no questions asked. And he said, we backed out with our weapons pointed toward where we went in. So did they see something? Did something, like you said, put into their head that there was going to be a fight? So the fight and flight, or fear and flight, took place. And it's not unheard of. As I started looking for reports where that has happened more often than not. Not only in some of the Bigfoot reports that I've read, from around the country. There's quite a number of those where, people will be like camping, having a good time, drinking a beer, sitting there, and all of a sudden, we need to pack up and leave now. And they pack up and they go. And in the paranormal, where experienced investigators have walked into a house or wherever, and they get so far in, or they may get up to the 2nd floor, and that same fear and flight thing hits them, and they say, okay, we're done, we're out of here. Everybody's out, and they're heading down to local Dunkin' Donuts. They're done. Mm-hmm. And they don't go back. They just don't go back for any reason. These guys went back with firearms, thinking that, well, whatever it is, if it comes after them, we got the firepower, we'll stop it. Well, evidently that didn't mean anything because they had firearms. They went in there and they were stopped. And these reports, I found a few, more than a few, I should say, where people have seen an entity of some sort or a creature of some sort, just walk by them like they weren't there, like it paid no attention. Or it walked by and within so many feet or yards, it just kind of vanished. And that's both in Bigfoot and the paranormal. And, we see it in UFOs a lot, but that's, you're looking at something that's maybe 30,000, 40,000 feet in the air, and it disappears. But this stuff on the ground is the stuff that's really got me half crazy, because this stuff, if you would have said this to me 2 years ago, I would have went like, I don't think so. But I'm finding cases like that. This guy was more than happy to talk about it, but he said he's done. He said, I'm finished. I'm not going back there. Never, ever, under any circumstance. Because I said to him, if we'd come up, would you show us where it's at? And he gave me enough information where I do know where he was. And he gave me the road number he was on, and when I mentioned that to another researcher up in that area, he said, yeah, he knows exactly where that road is, where that gate is. So you got to park outside the gate, but he only walked in, like I said, 150 yards. So, and who knows, maybe those 2 holes from the dogs are still there.
Well, this other researcher you talked to mentioned to you they saw something else in that area as well, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they said that they had a fellow run out of the woods on them and just kept on running. So what did he see? Or what did he feel? So is it, people talk about, telekinesis with UFOs and telecommunications and all this mind games and stuff like that. Well, who's to say that these creatures, whatever they are, have that same ability? And they don't have to really hurt you. They just have to put a fear in you that'll get you out of there, and you'll go.
Well, it's just like this, Sean and I were talking about this Mantis Man thing, where one of the witnesses just had this, he lost all bodily function. Well, everything went limp on him, and this thing got in his head. And we do hear that in cryptid sightings, Bigfoot sightings, and of course we hear it in alien type scenarios. This very well could be the same type of thing. Are people seeing, are people seeing alternate universes where this thing just shows up, where they're able to see it, or is it just show up inadvertently, or what's going on? I don't, you can't answer that unless you know the facts, but people are still seeing it nonetheless.
Well, yeah. I mean, and if you found like 5 reports, I mean, that wouldn't really light your fire. But I found lots of reports like that, where that fear and flight took over, or actually the fighter fleet took over. I mean, where people actually stood their ground, not for very long. They stood their ground, and they had no description. They didn't see anything. They didn't hear anything. They just were stopped, like hiking. The one was a report in Oregon where 2 young fellows, one was 19, I believe the other was 22, just hiking a trail that they hiked many, many times. And it was just like their yearly hike thing. So they loaded up and started up the trail, and they got about 3/4 of a mile into this trail, which they're very familiar with, heading for the spot where they were going to camp for the night and set up. And they just stopped dead in their tracks, and the same thing. They got the same feeling of, we shouldn't be here right now. We need to leave now. And they turned around and left. So they've never seen anything like, no creatures or anything like that. The guy said the biggest thing they ever saw there, they ran into a badger one time or something. And he said, that was enough. He said, he said, we never even saw a snake in the whole time we've been going up there, which was many years, since they were Boy Scouts. But this particular time, they got stopped. Why they stopped, they have no idea. They don't know what was there, but there was something there that made them fear for their lives. And they turned around and boogied.
We've all discussed this thing in Pennsylvania with these state game lands, and there's so many of these small areas within the state. And of course, Pennsylvania overall is got some pretty strange phenomena going on. People see a lot of different strange, a lot of different odd things and unexplainable, unknown things. And you and I even talked about that. I think today where these small areas just that are marked as state game lands. Is the state got something going on in these areas?
Well,
that they're marking them off.
You got the Quihana Wildlife Area, and I think Sean's familiar with that area, where you have a reactor, a nuclear reactor. Now it's defunct and it's been demobilized and evidently cleaned up, but that is sitting in a state game lands. Now the wildlife area is huge. I mean, I forget how many thousands and thousands of acres it is, but right smack in the middle of this thing, on State Game Lands 34, and it's still a restricted area, is a nuclear reactor. And when I saw that just totally blew my mind, and what it was, and it was huge. I mean, I got some overhead pictures of it when it was brand new, and this place is huge. And it was a cold water reactor, and it was actually put up there to, it was Piper Cub was developing a nuclear engine for small planes, private planes. And I'm thinking, well, why didn't they just take it up and put it up near Piper's plant, which is up in that area, Lock Haven? And they didn't. And they built this thing, and the state constructed it, actually. It cost $1.6 million back then. And they actually talked about it in '53. And then the land was purchased by Curtis Wright, and it's 24 square miles. The actual area that was cleared out and was all done by what they call themselves, if I remember right. It was it was run by the state. A bunch of out-of-work people were given a job to do it, and they did it. But, by 1960, the Air Force decided they were going to go through with this, and they really wanted nuclear-powered aircraft, which Stanton Friedman has talked about many times. As a matter of fact, he even worked on it. So the Air Force and Curtis Wright in August of '60 said they were going to donate the site to Penn State, and was selling one of their divisions with 235 employees who automatically lost their jobs. And it turned out to be, that was kind of a farce, that they were going to build that facility, but nobody knew it was going to be a nuclear facility. They just said it was like a Huron foam division that they were going to build. And they did. What they did was they built the nuclear reactor, and the facility was going to be built for research and training. And it was in Curtis Wright and Piper and the U.S. Air Force built this facility up there. And it's amazing. When you look at the overhead pictures of this place, Curtis Wright actually paid Pennsylvania to lease like 42,500 acres. So that gives you the kind of size. And the power lines that ran into this place were oh my God, they were phenomenal. They actually built roads to bring the power lines in, because the power lines couldn't be put on poles. They were too heavy. They had to be mounted on the ground.
Wow. So
the amount of power that thing was using, and it was completed in '67, it was just amazing. But why would you put a cold water nuclear reactor in the middle of a state game land?
Well, that's just it. I mean,
you could have done that. You could You could have done that at any airport or at Piper's plant.
Yeah.
Any place like that. But in 1993, here was the boogaboo that really put the clamps on it. That place was contaminated with strontium-90.
Okay.
And strontium-90, if anybody knows anything about that, you don't have to touch that. Just be in the same room with it.
Yeah.
And you're not going to go very far. You may get to your car, and you may get the ignition turned on, and that's pretty much all you're going to get done. And then they estimated by 2006, when they cleaned it up, it was going to cost $30 million. And I don't know, doesn't really tell you who paid that, if the state picked it up or the feds picked it up, but till this day, it's still, the contamination is just, it's still there. I mean, it's still a contaminated area.
Well, I don't know if you were aware of this or not, but I was just talking to Lon last week that they were storing radioactive materials, radioactive waste at State Game Lands 252.
Oh, brother.
Allenwood, out there behind the prison.
Why would they do that?
I don't know, but that's an area, I frequent for investigating.
Now, is that near Alvera?
Yeah, that is Elvira.
Huh. Now, are they using are they storing it in the old bunkers, or are they just burying it?
Well, and I don't know. I need to get some more specifics because there are a lot of bunkers out there that are sealed, that are locked, that you can't get into.
I know there's a couple open, but most of them are welded shut.
Quite a few, but there are a decent amount that are open, but there are many that are sealed shut, and that really interests me because, I spent a lot of time out there.
Now,
that was just reported not too long ago.
Some of the people really complained and lost their minds when they found out that when they did this cleanup, they were basically burying hundreds of drums with unknown waste from that facility. And they say you can still see the trench, which they say is about 125 25-foot trenches and 12 feet deep, and that's what they were putting this waste in. And a lot of, besides the strontium-90, there was like beryllium oxide, all other kinds of toxic compounds. And, people were worried about it getting into the groundwater, and they said, well, that'll never happen. Well, we know how that works. And, but they still do geology studies. I think it's once every other year, I read. But they did find some. The last they found was in 2007, which they dug up and just reburied, is all they did. It wasn't removed from the site. But it was an operation from 67 to 71, and then 71 it geared up and took on more, and that's when they started messing with the strontium-90 and the other stuff, and it was not good. So if anybody ventures in there, I wouldn't, bring anything home as a souvenir.
No, I don't think so.
Anybody that go in there without a Geiger counter in their hand would be a fool. Because strontium-90, if you remember just a couple years ago, that Russian spy that was killed over in England, he was assassinated. A guy poked him in the leg with an umbrella. That was strontium-90. It killed him in, 2.5 months? Painfully.
Something like that, yeah.
Very painfully. So, but why in the state game lands? And there's no military bases around there at all, not even a reserve center. But there have been reports of military personnel seen in that area in full combat gear. What would they be doing there?
Just going out for a walk.
Yeah, hunting bear. With a full automatic weapon.
Well, I'm going to tell you guys something. One night we were out at 252. A couple of the guys from the Keystone Bigfoot Project and my uncle all went out for an evening walk. We had split off, and I got on the radio that these guys had lasers pointed at them. They observed 4 men in all black gear, black military-style boots, high-powered rifles, and they had the lasers trained on them, and as they approached them, the gentlemen were sort of a passive aggressive about what they were doing out there. They didn't want to answer any questions, so we had joined up, and I had run up to the front of the guys and started introducing myself and talking to them, and they weren't really engaged with us, trying to figure out what we were doing. We asked them if they heard some strange sounds, and they said they were out there blasting. They're hunting coyotes, is what they were doing.
The old hunting coyote ploy.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, I don't know what kind of hunting coyotes they were doing out there, but these guys look professional. They were precision. They were definitely outfitted for the job, and I'll get you 6, 7 witnesses that'll tell you they saw the exact same thing I did. They were there with me that night. And we don't know what they were up to. They were going towards an area where we had heard some pretty awkward sounds coming from earlier in that night, an area behind a little like man-made dam behind a lake out that way. We heard some very interesting calls out that way. We were all heading towards it, but we were taking different areas, different routes to see if we could, pick up something on the way in there. And it would be my second team that they had took the route, and that's when they ran into those guys, and those guys were heading towards the same area we were. It was really interesting.
Well, if you run into another hunter or another group of Bigfoot researchers or ufologists or whatever walking around the woods, that's not such a big deal. When you walk into guys like that, or somebody in full military, in full combat gear, that kind of raises hackles on my neck. I get a little nervous. And, why that area? Why that particular area? We all know the history of the area, and we know the strange sightings in the area. So what is there that brings these fellows out? And, it's just like Lon with your story down there when you saw what you saw, and how like you said, almost instantaneously, the police and the military were on that site. Mm-hmm. And you have this guy with his sighting of a creature that he swears and declares was not Bigfoot. He said this was no Bigfoot. He said it was a man. He said, now, muscular, yes, but it was a man. He said it just, there's not even close. No pointed head, no thick neck, no big, broad, wide shoulders, no long, extended arms, no stupid-looking gait. This guy just walked across like he was crossing the street down on Main Street in Penfield. But he was big, he was covered in hair, and the protruding jaw snout, I guess is the best way to put that out, he said was just weird, just strange. And the fact that it never looked at him. So, then you get the government into play in the same areas that these things are happening in. Why? You get a hot spot in ufology, and you could sit there for 5 days staring at the sky catching flies with your mouth open and a pair of binoculars. But, the last venture we were on was our yearly equipment check. We just take the van down, we unload everything, set it up like we're on site of a sighting, and we just test everything, the computers, the radios, everything. And we notify them. They lock us in to the state park. They tell us they're going to lock us in, but they'll have somebody check on us. And the lady said, you may get a state trooper once or twice during the night, no big deal. I said, no, fine, absolutely. Tell them we have coffee. That state trooper was there every 45 minutes. Every 45 minutes. I could have set my watch by him. Mm-hmm. And the guy that was with me, he said, I can see his taillights go down the road, and it's not like the taillights disappear. It's like they get turned off. And I said, well, he said, and the last time I was here, when I looked down that road, I could see the lights turn on, and that car was in the same spot. So we're watching the sky, and they're watching us. And then while we're there, we have everything, cameras and everything set up, looking forward. I mean, the van's forward, all the gear's forward. We're not looking behind us. We're looking forward because it's a nice open spot, no light intrusion from any big city or anything like that. So we're seeing what we're seeing. We're elated because we're seeing stuff moving all over the place. He shows up, and of course, to get a cup of coffee for the 15th time. And out of clear blue, he said, well, what about that one? And we're looking, and he says, no, this one. And he's behind us. His car's parked on the road. We're off the road. And we look, and there's one coming across, and it stops and does like a U, dive, comes up, and continues on its way, then zigzags a few times and shoots straight up. And I said, do you see that stuff often? He says, oh, all the time. He said, we've had them come down to the ground. I said, really? He says, oh, yeah. He says, no big deal. So I started talking to him and back and forth, and I said, you know, you live around here, or are you close? What barracks you out of? He said, no, I work down here. He said, but I live up at State College. And he said, we see that stuff up there all the time. I said, well, how come you guys don't report it? He said, who's going to believe me? I said, I believe you. I just saw it. I said, so you're going to make an incident report about this? He went, no way. I went, okay. So the government, no matter whether state, local, or federal, they know what's going on. They know where it's going on at. They know what it is. And I'm sure that this invisible, visible creature up there in State Game Land 331 is probably well known by those folks.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same thing. I agree with you. I think I'm kind of thinking the same way because, you know, just the situation itself. I mean, and you know, when you take all the variables involved, and people know how the state is. Well, we're talking about Pennsylvania, but they're all like that. You know, we talk like the Game Commission in Pennsylvania swears up and down there are no big cats in Pennsylvania, but every once in a while somebody will shoot one or kill one or run over one, and they'll deny it.
Yeah, well, you know, I did a piece in our newsletter years back on the last cougar that allegedly was killed in the state of Pennsylvania, and it was like 1896 or something like that. The female was shot by a miner down by a creek where she was drinking. And her carcass is actually stuffed, and it's in the Pennsylvania Historical Society up in Harrisburg. And from that point, I mean, you can document all the cases of cougar sightings and panther sightings in Pennsylvania, all across the state, north, south, east, west. They're everywhere. And pictures of cats, large cats with long tails and, you know, muscular shoulders and big paws. That's not Tabby. That's not the neighbor's cat, you know?
No.
And we were fortunate enough, and the guy just passed away a few months ago, but there was a professor from the University of Pennsylvania who was studying big cats, and we were given our deal up in Schuylkill County 2 years ago. It was set up for orphan dogs and dogs that are being kept for adoption and stuff like that, and they were looking for donors. And it was a pretty big deal. I mean, there were a lot of vendors. There were a lot. They had music. They had all kinds of stuff. They had the Bigfoot truck up there. They had a whole bunch of stuff. And this guy walked over, and he stayed with us for about an hour and a half. He showed us footprints. He showed us casts of footprints. And then he had comparison casts. He said, this is a cougar. And the size was unbelievable. He said, this is a male coyote. And you're looking at those two casts, and you're going like, there ain't no way somebody's going to tell me that they saw a coyote, and it was actually a cougar. He says, no. And then you just had this cougar, 2 years ago, that they had tagged with a radio collar, and it went from like Colorado, and it got hit up in Massachusetts or New Hampshire or something like that. I forget where it was.
Yeah, I think it was up in Connecticut.
Yeah, but when they showed the route, the way they were tracking it, it actually went through Pennsylvania, northern Pennsylvania.
Sure.
So, guys, give me a break.
I've always had a good laugh out of these state game commissions that swear up and down there's no big cat.
You know what?
They talked about coyotes like that for years.
Oh yeah.
People were seeing, we were seeing coyotes in Maryland back in the 70s, but they would never acknowledge it. They still don't like to acknowledge it, but we see them all the time.
When I was still working before I retired 3 years ago. When I was still working we used to go out back to take a break, especially when it was nice out, nice summer night, and go out and take a break and take a couple guys and go out there and just smoke and shoot the crap and this and the other. We'd listen to coyotes howling away for hours, just carrying on all night long. Mm-hmm. So a game commission guy rolled through the parking lot one time. Now, Penske Corporation is a big campus. I mean, there's 2,900 people work there. But it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. That was my shift. I was a supervisor on a night shift. But we stopped him. And the coyotes are howling. They're howling. And I said, did you hear that? And he went, hear what? I said, are you deaf? He said, I don't hear anything. They're howling. I mean, as I'm speaking to him, they're howling. And he's talking to me like I'm some kind of nut. And I went, you know what? You're a waste of breath. I said, you don't hear that? And he just smiled, and he drove off. Have a nice night, guys. And off he went. So they're already predisposed, like most police departments and law enforcement and any type of enforcement is. They're already predisposed to tell you what you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
But as far as that part of Pennsylvania, I think a lot of western Pennsylvania was active up until, from what I see, up until a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And now a lot of the stuff is coming from either way northwest, like Venango and Erie and that area, or it's in the middle of the state and the northern tier of the state. And the cases are a lot better documented. The one that I'm getting now from Venango on, well, I've had 2 emails so far that she's explaining what happened because there's multiple sightings with multiple witnesses. And she's seeing orbs, and I'm going to put it the way she puts it, it looked like they're fighting with each other. They're chasing each other, they're hitting each other. And I went like, okay. And she says, and the best I can describe them is it's an orb. It's reddish or reddish-orange, but you can see through it. It's like almost translucent. And the inside looks like a lava lamp from the 60s. And I laugh because I got one sitting here on my desk. Shows you how old I am. But I investigated a case for a Canadian researcher along with him in Washington State last year. And the description given to the guy, and this object went right by him, 6 foot off the ground. He could have reached out and touched it. He described as a reddish-orange, translucent orb, circle, ball, about the size of a large beach ball. And the interior looked like the inside of a lava lamp from the 60s. Mm-hmm. And that description has come up many times over the years of the lava lamp looking translucent red or orange, or they're solid. And so she had just, this afternoon I got the coordinates, so she gave me the coordinates. They went out and took a GPS coordinate of where they saw it. But there are 3 other locations, so I'm going to get those probably tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And then sometime, probably this Saturday, I'm going to drive out, and while I'm out there, I'm going to go over to hit Cleveland and see if I can get over to Cleveland and pick up on their UFO meeting, Cleveland UFOlogy group. They've been there since, 1957, I think. They started way before MUFON. They're the oldest in the world. They have the same members that started. Well, they have a few. The same members that started back then, and this is going to be their 52nd year, I think.
Wow.
So they're the oldest. MUFON is not the oldest. They are. Wow. But anyhow, I'm going to try to hit them too. So be a lot of driving on Saturday. But yeah, there's a lot of strange things going on, especially up in Sean's area. You know, that whole in Dave Ruppert's area, that whole area, Reynoldsville and State College and Du Bois and just that strip. It's just really wild.
Well, that's why I'm hoping we get some good information for this roundtable, and that's a big reason why we're doing it, and make everybody aware of some of the things that are going on in the state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not just the creature reports. It's
everything.
It's everything. I mean, it's UFOs. It's Bigfoot. It's strange creatures. It's paranormal. For some reason or another, the last maybe year and a half, there's been so much interest in Indian burial grounds. We're going to go down to Ole, Pennsylvania, as soon as they're done planting, because we can't get, it's just too muddy to get through the field, and we'd have to drive through the field to get to the spot. But at the end of the property, it's a 50-acre property, and they have, there was just this huge pile of rocks, and they never paid much attention to it, but it was just a big pile of rocks, just huge rocks. And the lady said, you know, think that one of the old Cadillacs, she said, that's how big the stones are. And there's just a bunch of them back there. But one time they got back there, I think a tractor broke down, and it broke down right at that area, and they kind of went to sit on the rocks to wait for somebody to bring gasoline out or something. And they noticed that there's all kind of markings on these rocks. And she sent me traces of them, paper traces, and when I looked them up, they're Lenape Indian markings. Mm. So now the Lenape, I mean, they were all over Pennsylvania, just like the Susquehannock and everything else, but I mean, we had Cherokee in Pennsylvania, but it's just, so are we looking at a burial ground or some kind of sacred mound or something? And she said, now there is an opening. She said, but I'm not crawling in there. So, you know, I said, well, I might not do that either, but I said, I may have somebody that might do that, but I can walk into it. A lot smaller, a lot thinner. But so there's all kind of stuff out there, and there's all kind of investigations going on. I'm not too familiar with what all is going on out in the western part of the state, but I know around here it's very active, you know, in this part of the state and the lower end of the state down around, well, Gettysburg. That's what somebody said it was the most haunted spot in the country.
Oh, Gettysburg and that Adams, York County. Speaking of York County and Lancaster County, talk about the Bigfoot sightings we've been getting down there. I mean, we've gotten reports up to Yahoo for the last year or so, haven't we?
Oh, definitely. It's been lighting up like crazy.
It's been nuts.
I don't know what's going on, Butch, Lon, but some of these areas where we haven't gotten anything, and I'm thinking maybe it's due to some of the fracking going on, that these guys need to get away from it. And
you know, you may be onto something there, because I was looking at some reports. This has to be 3 years ago in Washington County. Okay, and they were hot and heavy. I mean, there was I'm not going to say every week, but at least twice a month there would be a report of something. And when they started fracking, about the same time, those reports ceased. They're just like somebody cut them off. There's just no reports out of Washington County at all. Uh-huh. And if one pops up, it really is a nothing. You know, it's a nothing report, which means that you can't confirm it. You can't get a hold of anybody to tell you what happened. They just put out a blurb, and that's it. And areas where there is no fracking, like, I don't know what you got up in your area, Sean, in fracking-wise, but it just seems like in the areas where populated that there's fracking, it just seems like the state game lands now are alive with these reports. And I don't know how many state game lands we have, because we have wild areas, we have state game lands, we have preservation areas. This state is covered with that stuff.
That's what I was saying. It's just so much... You know, and it didn't used to be like that when I was living up there, but over the past 35 years, it's like you got something popping up everywhere. I mean, you know, I think I read the other day, and I don't know if this is true or not, that there are over 700 protected areas in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, there is. That's what it is. There's over 700 and what I just read it, 720 or 721 protected areas in Pennsylvania. Now that includes wild areas. Now, inside the wild areas, you may have 5 or 6 state game lands, and then you have just state game lands, and then you have preservation areas where you can't hunt. You can hike in it, but you can't do anything else. You can hike in it. You can't camp in it. You can't go build a bonfire. You can't ride your motorcycle through it. You can't do anything. You can hike in it. That's what you're allowed to do. And those preservation areas, there must be 40 or 50 of those, and they're inside of wild areas. So you got, you know, these areas that probably people haven't been in years.
That's just it. You know, we talk about these cryptid sightings, albeit, you know, Bigfoot sightings. Who's to say areas people haven't been going in that they're not hanging up in there?
Sure, and you know that takes me to my little theory, which I've been laughed at a couple times with my guys. But I have a problem somewhere in my mind. I have this problem with people nailing pork chops to trees. Sorry, Sean. Throwing out donuts and bacon and hot dogs and rapping on trees with axe handles and screaming at the top of their lungs and running through the woods with flaming sticks and all that stuff. And a couple of reports, and I picked out about half a dozen, just for my own benefit to show that I wasn't really losing it yet, where a sighting takes place and somebody says, well, it just went over this little hill and it disappeared. Okay, well, there were a couple of those, and there were some where they just disappeared while they were watching them, and then there's some where they just ran off and they kind of tried to track them, but they couldn't track them. And I'm thinking, so, okay, why are we not looking for Bigfoot's trash? Has to have trash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sean, you mentioned something that me once before, didn't you?
Yeah, but I think it was off the. I honestly think it was off a conversation that we had with Butch before. But that was a really good point.
Maybe it was.
So
that sticks in my mind. I mean, and I thought it was a pretty good idea, to be honest with you.
I mean, there has to be trash. There has to be little ones. Nobody ever sees little ones. Well, Bobo sees little ones.
Yeah.
But a dog up a tree would be a small Sasquatch to Bobo. So we have little ones, old ones, females, and plus the males. So where do they stay? Where do they congregate? They need water. They don't need fire, but they need water. They need food. Forests are full of food. So, where do they take their nap? Where do they take care of their little ones and their families? I mean, so in my opinion, we should be looking in caves, which Pennsylvania is loaded with them, caves and old buildings, old factories, which Pennsylvania is riddled with, especially up in the northern end of the town, northern end of the state. There were shoe factories. I found abandoned shoe factories, clothing factories, parachute factories, car part factories, places that made pots and pans, dishes, glassware, and these places have been abandoned since, some of them in the late 1800s, and they're still there. So, you got a factory, say, and then when I started pinpointing just a couple of the factories, I didn't want to get too into it because it's going to be a whole lot of work for that, and I'm really going to need help on that. But I pinpointed a couple of reports and just did some overheads and did some research, and I didn't find any with caves close by, but I found 3 that there were old buildings within a mile. And within half a mile to a quarter to half a mile of those old buildings were streams or creeks, and in one case a river. So there's the water, there's the housing. We should be looking at that.
Yeah, I think they very well may utilize those old factories.
I mean, who's going to go into an old factory? Who would go into an old factory looking for Bigfoot? Nobody.
Sean?
Well, Sean might.
I would.
Yeah, Sean would, but really, if you talk to any investigator and say, Bigfoot investigator or cryptid investigator and say, well, have you gone into any old factories or anything looking for them? They'd probably look at you like you were crazy. But
that makes sense.
But they have to have trash.
Yeah.
They're sure not laying a little one out in the middle of the woods in below zero temperatures in the snow.
Well, this all comes down to my theory about trail cams and candy bars and then raccoons. So you put the candy bar out by the trail cam, and then you see the raccoon taking the candy bar. You never see the Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're right about that. I mean, the most unexpected places are probably the places where you should be looking.
Yeah.
And
people say, well, they're really good at hiding. They're the hide and seek champion of the world.
Yeah.
No, I think they're hiding in plain sight.
That may very well be.
I mean, it's just an opinion, and I mean, it's just a thought and a theory. But I know that this summer I'm going to try it because I found 2 places that had a number of sightings and still do up in that area. Mm-hmm. And those 2 locations both have old buildings. One actually has an old town, and the other place has a building railroad tracks, and an old train station, all abandoned for many, 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 many years. But it's worth a look.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. And, I tell you what, Butch, we're going to have to get you come back here after we do this roundtable, because I'm quite sure we're going to have a lot of stuff to disseminate when we get done with there. So, yeah.
I think we have a lot to talk about for a long.
I think we will. So, Sean, you want to wrap this up?
Yeah, I do. But first, before we wrap it up, and again, Butch, thanks for coming on to the program. I just wanted to put something out there for the folks who might be listening to the show. Folks, if you're having a problem in life and things aren't going right, there's other ways to do things besides to end it. And one of the things I'd like to do is, because we have such a forum, Lon and Butch, is point out that there is someone you can talk to. And if you're feeling down or you need someone to talk to and you're having thoughts that just don't make you feel right, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-8255. And you'll be routed to the nearest crisis center to receive some immediate counseling. Don't end it, folks. And that's what I want to leave us with.
Yeah, we want you to come back and listen to us.
That's right.
Yeah, we're going to have great stories after April 18th.
Most definitely. Check it out, LHS18011.org. And you can go to the website, arcaneradio.com. Butch, give them your website.
www.euphorcop.com. And they can find us on Facebook.
And there you have it, folks. You've been listening to Arcane Radio, Sean Forker, Lon Strickler, and our good friend Butch Witkowski. Thank you very much, folks.